teaching the commandments of men instead of the Torah. Laying aside the commandment of Yahweh. What's the commandment of Yahweh? Vayikra 11, 2 Samuel, what we just read. Say that again. The Tanakh, exactly. Laying aside the Tanakh, or the commandment of Yahweh, you guard the traditions of men, such as the washing of pots and cups, and many such things you do. So still we're in the context of Pharisaic and Sadducee dogma, traditions of men, ritual hand washing. You have to take the cup, which had 2 handles on it, and you have to take your dirty hand and grab this side of the pitcher and pour the water over your other dirty hand. Then that would make this hand clean, and then with your clean hand you could touch the other side of the handle, which hadn't been touched by your dirty hand, and then pour the water over your dirty hand, thus making it clean. Then you'd put the pitcher down, and now you can eat. That is a tradition of men, and it is not in the Torah. You're laying aside the commandment. What commandment? Verse 9. And he said to them, full well do you reject the commandment, the mitzvah of Yahweh, that you keep your own tradition. This is the commandment that they're laying aside. For Moshe said, the 5th commandment of the Decalogue, honor your Abba and your Ima, and whoever curses his Abba or Ima, let him die in death. But you lay that commandment aside, and this is what you say. If a man shall say to his Abba or Ima, it is Korban, that is to say, a gift to Yahweh, from whatever you might have received from me, he shall be free, and you no longer allow him to do any good matter for his Abba or Ima. Meaning, their parents could be in a really bad way and in need of help financially, first fruit harvest, wine, bread, challah, just like David celebrated back in the Haftarah, and they would withhold it from their parents and say, this is Korban. This is to be set aside and be brought forth to Yahweh. This is for Yahweh. And they would neglect the 5th commandment based upon their traditions. That is what the context is up until this point. Verse 13, making the word of Yahweh of no effect through your tradition, which you have delivered, and many similar things you do. And when he had called all the people to him, he said to them, listen to me, every one of you, and understand. Listen and understand. There is nothing from outside a man that entering into him can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are the things that defile him. It's basically, Mashiach is talking about, is your heart inclined to the oral law of the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the tradition? Or is your heart, what's inside of you, inclined to the written law of Yahweh, which includes those hard scriptures that I just read to you? What's your heart inclined to? Is it inclined to grocery store meat, or is it inclined to Deuteronomy chapter 12 verse 16? What is in your heart? Will you try and excuse the word of Yahweh through your traditions, or will you just accept the divine authority of Yahweh's word and be healthy and free of disease? Because he goes on to say, in verse 17, and when he had entered into the bayit, the house, away from the people, his Talmudim asked him concerning the parable. And he said to them, are you also without binah? Do you not perceive that things from outside that enter in the man cannot defile him? So people say, see, I can eat pig and it doesn't defile me. That is ripping this totally out of context, because that isn't even in the context thus far. And anyway, that's not true. Can you eat poison oak and it not defile you? Can you eat rancid old meat and it not defile you? No, that is not true. So even if you want to use that argument, it doesn't stand, it doesn't wash. That is not what we're talking about. The human heart is the problem, not Yahweh's eternal word. Isn't that the truth? Vayikra 11 isn't the problem. That's not a problem. Leviticus chapter 11 is not a problem. And what we read in the book of Samuel shouldn't be a problem either. It's your heart that's the problem. It's your heart that's the problem, is what Mashiach Yahushua is saying. And then we see verse 19, a beautiful translation, until there is a tradition that has been added. A translation addition has been added into the text that is not in the earliest manuscripts. And in your King James Bible, it will be italicized, meaning it doesn't exist. It's in brackets or it's italicized. In mine, it's italicized. And that is, thereby purifying all foods. That is not in the oldest manuscripts. It's not in the text, and it shouldn't be in this piece of text. Because it enters not into his lev, but into his stomach, and then is thrown out through the intestines. Stop. That's it.
It's in this one too.
Yes, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It's a translation edition, and it's not in the earliest manuscripts. So, thereby purifying all food is not in the earliest manuscripts. And we will actually look at that a little bit later when we go to Matthew chapter 15, speaking on the very same piece of text. It's not in that text. Verse 20, and he said, that which comes out of the man, that defiles him. And anyway, even if you wanted to use the argument that thereby purifying all foods is in the text, sure, it is in later manuscripts, but even that Greek word that is used for that translation that is in later manuscripts is the Greek word broma. It's the Greek word broma, and it means what is eaten. And the Hebrew word, the Hebrew equivalent would be machal, meaning kosher food. So what is eaten, the Greek word broma, is already defined back in Vayikra 11. So even that argument doesn't wash. A little bit of studying, we can actually dig these things out. But as I said, in the earliest manuscripts, it's not even in there, so I wouldn't be concerned about it. In verse 20, and he said, that which comes out of the man, that defiles the man, for within, out of the heart of men proceeds evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, and murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, and deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. That's what it's about. The evil things that come from within. So within the text, the issue is clearly the traditions of ritual hand washing does not make one pure and change a man's heart, does it? You can wash your hands according to the traditions of the elders all you want, but it's not going to purify you, and it's not going to change your heart. Foods not ritually treated according to the oral law or Pharisaic or Sadducean custom and non-biblical Pharisaic tradition are acceptable for eating. You don't have to ritually wash your kosher piece of lamb. You don't have to ritually wash your hands before eating. That is what this piece of text is talking about. Foods not ritually treated according to the oral law and non-biblical Pharisaic tradition are acceptable for eating. They are. They are acceptable for eating if they are in line with Yahweh's whole counsel. That is what we're to understand. And anyway, let's look in Matthew chapter 15:3, and we'll finish up there. And later on in Matthew chapter 15:20, Mashiach himself gives us the answer to the very question. Matthew chapter 15, book of Matthew chapter 15. In verse 3, and he answered and said to them, why do you also transgress the commandment of Yahweh by your takanot, or tradition? So the context is the takanot, the tradition, versus the mitzvah. That's the context. And then in verse 20 of chapter 15, Mashiach says, these are the things that defile a man. He's going to give us the answer. These are the things that defile a man. but to eat with unwashed hands defiles not a man. That is what he's talking about. Those things that proceed, the evil thoughts, the murders, the adulteries, the fornications, the thefts, the false witnesses, and the blasphemies, these are the things that defile a man.